jQuery came about. It's one of the most useful and popular JavaScript libraries out there, right? And it's widely used today. It's unthinkable that you would build something without jQuery today. If you have to directly manipulate the DOM, right, and just get dirty with accessing the DOM or adding to a DOM or removing from the DOM, it really makes no sense to do it without jQuery, right? We're using Angular, which is a higher level of abstraction that uses jQuery underneath, right? But it creates this high level of abstraction where you don't really talk to the DOM directly yourself, right? Instead, you have this kind of like object-oriented layer, right, that you send objects to the DOM, and then the DOM either iterates or manipulates the HTML directly. Yes? But from JavaScript, you never actually know what the DOM looks like. You don't know that these are ULs or tables or H1s or paragraphs, or you don't know that there are classes and IDs. And that's the whole point of Angular and these other libraries, all these MVC libraries. What they try to do is create these levels of abstraction, right, that you never need to know what's happening underneath, right? Or at least what they do is they try to force you to treat the abstraction at their different levels. So if you are manipulating the DOM, the best place to do that is at the HTML level. So that's what the views are for, right? In Angular, right? That's where if you're gonna touch the DOM, the best way to do it is at the HTML level. So don't do it in JavaScript, do it in the HTML, right? So that's what Angular tries to force you, right? There's no DOM manipulation in the JavaScript. That should happen in the HTML. And from the HTML, there's no manipulation of the data. That should happen in the JavaScript. So each bucket has a very clear role to play. The JavaScript only deals with objects. HTML only deals with DOM and HTML elements. Yes? Right? jQuery is it's a lower level API that allows you to manipulate the DOM natively, right? I mean, you could go even more native. You just use plain old JavaScript, but that would be nuts. And the reason for jQuery to exist is that there are many different vendors, many different versions of JavaScript, right? And developers were finding themselves that to target different vendors, to type all the different versions of JavaScript that are out there, all the different vendors of browsers, right? They were finding themselves that they had to build many different versions of their same code, right? And do tests on their JavaScript code to test whether they were running on IE, they were running on Firefox, on Safari, on Chrome, and depending on what version of the browser, they would do one thing or another. Yes? So all their code was lots and lots of switch case statements, right? So if it's this version, do this. If it's that other version, do that, right? And it was just a nightmare to maintain this code, right? So somebody had a really great idea that says, hey, why don't we create all these? Why don't we encapsulate all these switch case statements into one nice library, standard library, right? So that instead of you having to do all these switch case statements, you just have one single function that does what it's supposed to do, and inside that function, it will take care of the right versions, the right vendors, and it'll do the right thing for the right version for the right vendor. Make sense? Right. So that's the big breakthrough of jQuery. It allows developers to target one single API, and then let jQuery do the hard work, right, of deciding how to do it for the different vendors. So that ideally you develop for one jQuery version, and then that jQuery version takes care of all the different vendors. Make sense? All right. So let's play around with jQuery. If you go to the API documentation, you'll find lots of documentation that I encourage you to play around with. So I think the best way is to just play around with it ourselves. Okay. So let me see. Let's install it locally, and let's play around with it in a couple examples. Right. We'll do that next.